Wang Shiqi never expected that her 30th birthday would end in such a humiliating way. "What are you sitting there for? Hurry up and take off that dress," her husband Han Ming ordered as soon as their friends left. "Return it tomorrow. Whatever you can get back, do it. This dress was bought with my own money. Why should I listen to you and return it?" Wang Shiqi's eyes were fixed on the cake on the table, the candles flickering as they were about to go out, their wavering flames seeming to struggle for one last moment. "Do you think just because you're wearing a dress worth over 10,000, you're a princess or a queen? You should really consider if you're worthy of it." Han Ming spoke casually, seemingly unaware of how hurtful his words were. He stood up to pour himself a glass of water, frowning with apparent concern. "Wang Shiqi, what's wrong with you? We've only been married for a few years. How did you change so much?" A wave of humiliation washed over her, and Wang Shiqi's face flushed with anger as she trembled. She looked at her husband in disbelief, feeling as if she were gazing at a stranger. The dress was from a luxury brand's latest collection. She had hesitated for a long time before deciding to buy it as a gift for herself on her 30th birthday. Although she knew it was a bit indulgent, she had always been frugal and had never made impulsive purchases. Now at 30, the passing years had amplified her feelings of insecurity. This dress was merely a small comfort for her lost youth. But today, through this dress, she realized her position in her husband's eyes. She was not worthy of such an expensive dress. To him, she was just a married woman who didn't need to dress up or seek romance. When she wore the beautiful dress, ready to accept her friends' well wishes, her husband erupted in anger upon discovering the dress's hefty price, showing no regard for her feelings and creating an incredibly awkward atmosphere. Their friends had no choice but to leave, as family matters are often best solved privately. "In your eyes, I'm only fit to wear cheap clothes, right?" Wang Shiqi finally found her voice after a long silence, trembling as she spoke. "The point is, can our financial situation support such extravagance? A dress costing half a year's salary. Do you really think that's something a married woman should do?" Han Ming argued logically. "We still have mortgage and car loans to pay. Not to mention, after covering our living expenses, there are also our parents' support costs. And the key is we're both 30 now. It's time for kids, which will be a huge expense. Given all this, do you still dare say you didn't make a mistake? I just wanted to commemorate my 30th year. Is that so wrong? A photo would suffice, right?" Han Ming was getting more agitated, his voice rising. He stood up saying, "You want to celebrate your 30th with a dress worth over 10,000. What about when you turn 40? Are you going to buy something else then? You're just making excuses. I never thought you would become so vain." "Vine." Wang Shiqi struggled to point at herself, tears welling in her eyes. Holding back her hurt, she said, "Han Ming, if I truly cared about vanity, would I have married you?" Wang Shiqi felt wronged. When they got married, they didn't even have a proper wedding. After obtaining their marriage certificate, they just hosted a few tables of food in the countryside to celebrate. At that time, she was completely focused on Han Ming. Both of their families were struggling, so even such a significant event as marriage had to be meticulously planned. They saved wherever they could. Han Ming simply rode his bicycle to pick her up, and she didn't even have a wedding dress. Because the wedding was so frugal, Han Ming cried his heart out that night, lamenting his inability to give her a dream wedding. He solemnly promised that, in no time, he would achieve success and not only provide her with a worry-free life, but also throw a grand wedding celebration. Since Wang Shiqi was willing to marry him so simply, she naturally didn't mind the lack of extravagance. She was filled with longing for a future with Han Ming and had never cared about material wealth. Their relationship had been established back in college, when Han Ming was willing to eat steamed buns and pickles just to save money to buy her gifts. After all, she was a young girl who loved to dream, who wouldn't appreciate expensive gifts from their partner. But Wang Shiqi would always return those gifts, opting instead for cheap trinkets from street vendors, saying earnestly, "For a girl like me, this kind of thing is just perfect." At first, Hanming would argue that she deserved better given her circumstances. But she didn't care. She repeatedly emphasized that the simplest things were the best. Eventually, Hanming stopped giving her expensive gifts altogether, and gradually, the gifts disappeared completely. At that time, Wang Shiqi didn't mind because, given their situation, having enough to eat was already a blessing. There simply wasn't much money to spend on romance. From that point on, Hanming no longer gave her any gifts or cared about any sense of ritual. Sometimes, when Wang Shiqi expressed her feelings about it, he would bluntly tell her she was being dramatic. Perhaps she had truly made a mistake. She had only wanted to avoid burdening her partner financially, but little did she know he took it seriously and became so calculative, causing her endless distress. Perhaps the significance of turning 30 is something only women can understand. Her friends all supported her decision to indulge herself with a luxury gift, while the men criticized her as being irresponsible. Even if there wasn't an issue with the dress today, Wang Shiqi still felt sad because Hanming had completely forgotten her birthday. When he saw the cake, he impatiently remarked, "Can't you resist sweets? Don't complain when your diet fails." Wang Shiqi fought to keep her emotions in check, wanting her 30th birthday to be a happy occasion, but it hadn't turned out as she had hoped. After all this thinking, her head felt like it would explode. She quickly began to question why she had married Hanming in the first place, and if he ever truly loved her. "What are you crying about?" Hanming suddenly snapped, clearly at the end of his patience. He tugged at his hair, frowning. "Crying? What's there to cry about?" With that, he stormed off to the bedroom, leaving no further sound. Wang Shiqi sat on the sofa, feeling her carefully applied makeup running down her face. She went to the bathroom to remove her makeup, wash her face, and then stepped out wearing her expensive dress. Wang Shiqi was relieved to have a home to return to. Her parents were overjoyed to see her, and her mother quickly rushed to the kitchen to prepare a feast, asking, "Didn't you say you weren't coming?" Then, as if just realizing, she asked, "Why didn't Hanming come?" Wang Shiqi didn't want to share the truth with her parents, so she casually lied. "He was called in to work late by his boss, so I came alone." "Oh, I see." Her parents didn't suspect anything. They happily served her dishes, showering her with warmth, treating her like a child once more. But thinking of this, the sadness she had just shaken off returned. Reflecting on the past, she realized that Hanming had indeed loved her once. It wasn't an extravagant love story. He would pick out the scallions and cilantro from her bowl and order extra servings of her favorite dishes. He would even travel miles just to satisfy her cravings, waiting in line for hours to bring her a treat. These simple gestures were what made her willing to spend her life with him. Even now, Hanming would help with housework in his spare time, easing her burden, which is why her friends praised him as a good husband, and she had accepted that praise in her heart. "Mom, this dress cost 23,000 yuan, Wang Shiqi suddenly said. Her mother was taken aback, instinctively moving away and frowning. "What kind of dress costs over 20,000 yuan? It's a luxury brand. Over 20,000 is actually a bargain. What's gotten into you? Why are you spending money so recklessly? How long can you wear this dress?" Wang Shiqi lowered her head at her mother's reprimand. Perhaps she really had gone too far and shouldn't have been so indulgent. "It's just 20,000, so what?" Her father chimed in nonchalantly. "Since she met Hanming, look at how much our daughter has suffered. Why should everyone else wear expensive dresses while my daughter is stuck with rags worth just a few dozen yuan? What promises did that boy make? I feel like since she married Hanming, she hasn't had a single good day." His words brought tears back to Wang Shiqi's eyes, and she discreetly wiped them away. Her mother, noticing, said anxiously, "Why are you crying? Did I say something too harsh?" Her father bluntly stated, "Something's definitely wrong with Hanming. I could tell from the moment she walked in that her mood was off." Under her parents' questioning, Wang Shiqi finally laid everything bare, still confused. "Even if it is my fault, does he really need to humiliate me in front of so many people?" "I'm sure he didn't mean it," her mother tried to comfort her. Marriage isn't easy. After all these years, you know what kind of person he is. Don't take it too much to heart. Otherwise, you'll only hurt yourself. Wang Shiqi disagreed with her mother's words. Over the years, it seemed she had never truly understood Han Ming. Sometimes she felt he loved her deeply, while other times it felt like he didn't care at all. In this uncertainty, she stubbornly believed that if Han Ming truly loved her, she would feel it clearly, just like in their early dating days. But why didn't she feel that way now? Wang Shiqi had intended to stay a few days at her parents' home, but when her mother-in-law unexpectedly ended up in the hospital, she set aside her grievances to go and care for her. When Han Ming saw her, he reacted normally, directing her to help with his mother. Wang Shiqi felt uncomfortable but complied, reasoning that it was understandable for him to be emotional during such a time. Han Ming told me you bought a dress for over 20,000 yuan, her mother-in-law said as soon as she woke up. Have you returned it yet? Wang Shiqi felt as if she'd been slapped, her face burning as she replied, I haven't had the chance. Make sure you return it quickly. You might not be able to later, her mother-in-law urged, gripping her hand tightly. You're usually so sharp. How did you suddenly lose your mind and buy something like that? A dress costing over 20,000 yuan? Is it supposed to grant you immortality? Wang Shiqi was at a loss for words, and Han Ming, busy with work, interjected. Mom, I already talked to her about this. But her mother-in-law wasn't done. Tears in her eyes, she said, let this go this time, but don't do something like this again. How can we continue living like this? Wang Shiqi never imagined a dress would cause such trouble, especially since Han Ming claimed his mother had fainted because of it, making her feel entirely responsible. The guilt compelled her to return the dress, grateful she hadn't removed the tags. However, seeing the disdain in the store clerk's eyes made her tear up. Han Ming accompanied her, noticing her distress. We have to be realistic, he said. With our situation, what's the point of wearing a dress that expensive? Unless you're stepping out of a luxury car, people will think it's a knockoff. Wang Shiqi's heart sank further, feeling as if someone had wrapped their hands around her throat, making it hard to breathe. Han Ming continued, I've always thought you looked good, even without makeup. All those things are superficial. You want to look beautiful for me, right? Finally looking up, she asked, does being married mean I no longer have the right to be beautiful? Han Ming sighed. What good is beauty if you can't afford to eat? Would you still care about looking good if you were starving? Wang Shiqi shook her head. But we're not at that point. Clearly losing patience, Han Ming said, you're just being argumentative. As adults, we need to be aware of our situation. You shouldn't need me to explain this. With that, he walked away, leaving her standing there, hoping he would come back to comfort her. But Han Ming drove off, not even glancing back as if saying, you need to reflect on your own. Wang Shiqi felt deeply wronged. Despite her frustrations, she returned home, relieved that Han Ming didn't seem inclined to continue their argument. He had prepared dinner, as if waiting for her. However, just as she was about to sit down to eat, Han Ming coldly said, let's wait until my mom gets back. Is she coming home today? Wang Shiqi asked. Yeah, she doesn't like staying in the hospital, so she's being discharged early. Dad went to pick her up. They should be back soon, Han Ming replied, focused on his phone. It turned out he wasn't waiting for her at all. Wang Shiqi's hand holding the chopsticks felt suddenly cold. She didn't even realize how she dropped them, stood up, and retreated to bed. Dazed, she fell asleep without knowing when, only to be awakened by her mother-in-law's voice. To her surprise, she found tears at the corners of her eyes. Did you return the dress? Her mother-in-law asked again. Yes, I did, Wang Shiqi hurriedly replied. That's good, her mother-in-law said, her worried expression brightening. Don't sleep, come eat. Feeling exhausted, Wang Shiqi buried her face in the blanket and softly said, I want to sleep a bit longer. You guys eat first. At that moment, Han Ming walked over, pulling his mother along. He casually glanced at Wang Shiqi and said, Don't mind her. She'll eat when she's hungry. His mother didn't insist further, reminding Wang Shiqi to eat before heading to the dining room with Han Ming. As the door closed behind them, Wang Shiqi buried herself under the covers and closed her eyes. Tears flowed uncontrollably as she tried to suppress her sobs. Eventually, she cried herself to sleep again. In her dreams, it felt like someone was holding her gently, stroking her hair. Wang Shiqi instinctively leaned into the embrace, but suddenly woke up to see Han Ming gazing at her. Still upset, he asked softly, "Don't be, it's all in the past." His tender demeanor made her blush a little. "What about her parents?" "They'll go back after dinner," Han Ming said. "Are you hungry?" Before she could answer, her stomach growled. Embarrassed, she buried her face in Han Ming's embrace and said, "I'm hungry." Han Ming smiled, ruffling her hair, then helped her sit up. "I knew you'd be hungry. Come on, let's eat." Wang Shiqi followed him to the dining room, where he brought her a steaming bowl of noodles. Before she could dig in, he magically produced a necklace, a belated birthday gift. "Accept this, and we'll call it even," he said playfully. The silver necklace, with a flashy diamond, looked quite tacky, yet in Han Ming's hands, it felt elevated. The power of love was strange. Wang Shiqi thought to herself that she wouldn't even want such a necklace for free, but somehow, it felt more precious than luxury brands because it came from Han Ming. "Thank you, hubby," she said joyfully, asking him to put it on her, resolving not to be angry anymore. Suddenly, she recalled the dream she had about divorcing Han Ming. In the dream, he yelled about wanting a divorce while she begged for mercy. After the separation, she was left lonely, unable to find a new place in life due to her past. She never wanted to part with Han Ming, and now it was clear that if their relationship broke, she would be the one suffering the most. Han Ming was only concerned about their future. It wasn't a lack of love. After all, life had to go on, and she couldn't afford to be petty. With that, Wang Shiqi successfully reassured herself. Life could go on, Wang Shiqi naively thought, until the last straw broke her back. One day, Han Ming's company organized a gathering where most married employees brought their partners along, so he naturally brought Wang Shiqi. To avoid embarrassing him, she meticulously dressed up and carefully put on the necklace he had gifted her. Though not expensive, it was his first gift after their marriage, symbolizing their love. With anticipation, she followed him to the hotel. The venue wasn't overly luxurious, but it was certainly beyond what Wang Shiqi usually frequented. After they sat down, she quietly waited for others to arrive. During this time, a couple approached to greet them. A woman, happily linking arms with her husband, said to Han Ming, "Thank you for the birthday gift. You really didn't have to. We feel so guilty." As she spoke, she lifted her husband's hand, revealing matching elegant bracelets that clearly cost a fortune. Wang Shiqi recognized their value immediately. "What are you saying? It's just a small gift between friends." Han Ming replied generously, completely oblivious to Wang Shiqi's expression. "Sister-in-law, you're so lucky to have such a good husband," the couple chimed in unison, which pierced Wang Shiqi's heart like a knife. They knew to give gifts to others, but not to her. Even the gift he gave her was far less expensive than what he gave to others. Why was that? Once the couple left, Han Ming returned to his phone, and Wang Shiqi couldn't help but ask, "How much were those bracelets?" "They weren't too much," he replied, still absorbed in his screen. "Only about 7 or 8,000. 7 or 8,000? Wang Shiqi managed to keep her voice steady, but her surprise was palpable as she widened her eyes at him. "How could you spend that much on someone else?" "They help me a lot at work. What's wrong with giving a little something?" Wang Shiqi felt speechless for a moment, her gaze fixated on the couple's bracelets, filled with jealousy and resentment. Why couldn't she, as his wife, receive such gifts? Seeing her silent, Han Ming thought she was worried about the money and leaned closer, saying, "It's not expensive. There was a promotion when I bought it, and I got a necklace too. That one's usually around 400 or 500. At the mention of the necklace, Wang Shiqi instinctively touched her neck, trembling as she asked, Is it this one? Yes, Han Ming said, completely unaware of any insensitivity. He continued, proud of himself. It's like I got a free necklace, right? How great is that? How great indeed. Wang Shiqi repeated those words in her mind, unable to suppress a bitter smile. In her husband's eyes, she was only worthy of a freebie. Throughout their marriage, she had tried hard to be a good wife, never asking for anything. Even when she envied other marriages, she never compared him to others, nor did she confront him about not fulfilling his promise to hold a wedding ceremony. She had always told herself not to be too petty, but now she found it impossible to endure. Why should she suffer such indignities? In the past, when her mother and mother-in-law were both ill, she spent all her time caring for her mother-in-law and barely had time to visit her own mother. During holidays, she was the only one busy cooking and cleaning while everyone else relaxed, like a free housekeeper. Meanwhile, Han Ming occasionally did some housework and received praise from everyone, certified as a good husband. How had she come to accept his repeated emotional neglect over the years? When did her expectations for marriage become so low? Feeling wronged, Wang Shiqi barely touched her food, drowning her frustrations in alcohol. Noticing her unusual behavior, Han Ming asked, "What's wrong? Why are you just drinking? Eat more. We don't get meals like this often, so why not enjoy it? Why can't we eat here more often? Is it made of gold?" Han Ming frowned, puzzled. What's with the hostility? Unable to hold back, she confronted him. "Do you think I'm only worthy of a miserable life? What are you talking about? I'm being frugal so we can have a better life. But I'm really unhappy right now. Is it because I won't take you to eat here often?" Han Ming retorted, irritated. "Why are you acting up again? I told you we shouldn't compare ourselves to others. We just need to live steadily, and things will get better. We can't rush it." A knot of frustration twisted in her heart, almost pushing her to the brink. She covered her mouth to suppress her feelings, but tears slipped out anyway. Soon, someone noticed her distress and asked, "Sister-in-law, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" "It's nothing," Han Ming waved dismissively. "She's just throwing a tantrum. She wants me to bring her here more often. I won't, and now she's upset. How ridiculous." "Don't be upset, sister-in-law. Han Ge is just joking. He's always generous with us. There's no way he'd be stingy with you." Wang Shiqi had hardly interacted with Han Ming's colleagues and was shocked to learn that he appeared so generous to others. If that was true, why was he so stingy with her? "I'm not joking. We've been married for years, yet she still acts like a little girl, always wanting gifts and wish lists. It's exhausting," Han Ming complained, seemingly a bit drunk, bringing up the time Wang Shiqi spent thousands on luxury items, laced with reproach. The scene echoed back to her 30th birthday. In front of their friends, Han Ming scolded her. "No matter how much gold you wear, Wang Shiqi is still Wang Shiqi. You can't become some noble princess. You need self-awareness. Ask yourself if you're worthy before doing anything." The atmosphere at the table grew awkward as Wang Shiqi coldly replied, "Did you ever think to ask yourself if you're worthy before you criticized me?" Han Ming turned, displeased. "What do you mean by that?" "What do I mean?" she scoffed, raising her glass and splashing it across his face. "You can ask me what I mean when you're sober." With that, she tried to leave, but several people blocked her, trying to defend Han Ming. "Sister-in-law, don't be upset. He's just drunk. He doesn't mean it." Wang Shiqi shot a glance at the still complaining Han Ming and retorted, "Whether he's drunk or sincere, he knows it, and so do I." Han Ming's attitude stemmed from his disregard for her feelings, making her feel unappreciated and utterly disrespected. Was it worth staying with someone like him? Upon learning that Wang Shiqi was contemplating divorce, her parents expressed deep concern. "What's causing this? Things seemed fine before." They had seemed fine, but that was all due to her compromises. The thought of spending decades in a relationship that belittled her made her feel a wave of fear, robbing her of sleep. "Are you really dissatisfied with Han Ming's financial situation? He's not poor, and if you leave him, you might not find someone better, her mother cautioned. Wang Shiqi had long thought this through. Han Ming isn't poor and is ambitious, but his love for me is lacking. In his eyes, I'm just a woman who suffered. Where's the dignity of a wife in that? I've never cared if he can provide a luxurious life. What matters is his love for me. She envisioned her future clearly. After becoming single again, I can live my life however I want without having to accommodate anyone else. That's selfish, her mother pleaded. People will laugh at you. As long as I work hard and live freely, people will only envy me, Wang Shiqi replied, finally seeing things clearly. Marriage isn't a compulsory answer in life. I have the right to choose to walk away at any time. Seeing she was resolute and with her father's support, her mother could only align with her. After spending a few days at her parents' home, Han Ming hadn't contacted her, as if intentionally making things difficult. But Wang Shiqi stayed calm. She wouldn't act until he reached out first. Is it true you want a divorce? Han Ming called, his tone accusatory. When she confirmed, he exploded in anger, saying, Fine. If you want to leave, then go. Wang Shiqi understood him well enough to guess why he was so quick to agree. He believed she would regret it. During the signing of the divorce agreement, Han Ming repeatedly reminded her, We've been married. You must just be confused. I can give you a chance to rethink this. Thank you. Wang Shiqi took the pen and signed her name, pushing the agreement back to him. But I don't need it. Han Ming was clearly taken aback that she would actually sign, especially since the agreement stipulated she wouldn't get much. This contradicted her reasons for wanting the divorce. He floundered for words but managed to say, At 30, women are like tofu scraps. Do you really think you'll find a good man after leaving me? He sneered. You think you'll find some wealthy guy who'll spend lavishly just to make you smile? Wang Shiqi had no desire to banter with him. After quickly packing a few things, she held the divorce agreement and said, I hope you can take the time to finalize the divorce with me. Han Ming exclaimed, Wang Shiqi, I bet you'll regret this. Standing in the hallway, she turned back, smiling softly. Sorry, but I'm not in the mood to regret, she said before shutting the door firmly. The joy of newfound freedom made Wang Shiqi hum a tune. In dreams, she'd fought against the divorce, feeling immense pain, but now she felt the exhilaration of a fresh start. From now on, she would earn her own money and create her own happiness. Whether or not she found a new home didn't matter. She would no longer rely on anyone. After all, those who maintain their independence live more easily.